So, as we heard yesterday, Santa is a binary blacklist whitelisting tool. You can do it in monitor mode or lockdown mode. That means that you can either be permissive and just log binary opens. And when Henry said binaries yesterday, means applications, command line tools. The only thing that Google decided was out of scope for the design of Santa were scripts. So randomly running something with the Python interpreter is not going to get logged, but, well, you'll see a path of what Python opened, but you won't see it as something that Santa can fingerprint and therefore restrict from running. And that would probably be because Google's a company that makes lots of software and they have lots of engineers that want to do utility scripts, and they felt that it was not worth necessarily being too concerned with. So I only recently, as I was investigating it for interacting with it through Zentral, started looking at Santa. The implementation of what is happening on disk is it actually comes with a pretty complete install versus, as I was saying yesterday with OS Query, that it does not start getting persistence the moment you install it on the system. So the other thing that would be of note is the fact that Santa has a kernel extension. It's therefore somewhat privileged on your system. So, no, not you. So let's actually see if we can see what's going on when you interact with Santa. The main things that happen is that it logs. So it has its own log file. If we look at what horrible applications I've run. Like recently, you see that there's actions that Santa D is logging as having performed. So the kernel extension is watching the opens of a process on disk of binaries, meaning apps or command line tools. And so like core services, location menu app ran. It was allowed, and that decision was based on the fact that there's a certificate that's whitelisted. That certificate is what you're reading the information of when it comes to this SHA-256 fingerprint. So if you open a regular cert from a application developer, that cert will have a fingerprint to say this is a unique, definitely verified thing of in the chain of trust from Apple, this developer got a signing cert, and that signing cert was used when compiling this binary that you then see running. So a lot of other things are being logged by Santa, and this is just in monitor mode. This is not in lockdown mode. If I get out of this window and I say, hey, I'd like to use what's everybody's favorite 70s prog rock band? Yes, right? So if I want to run yes, it goes yeah. With Santa CTL, if I ask it for some help, it'll say that, would you like to get file info? Would you like to create a rule? Or would you like status? Sync is when you're using a TLS connection like Zentral. The way to get more help on this, so we could block list that thing, like, because say we have no taste in art rock, and therefore we don't want to listen to yes ever again. Let's create us a rule or a help with we want help with that first. Again, I did not actually rehearse any of this. We can add it, but with a path. So the way we're going to do it is say, hey, give me add it to the blacklist. Here's the path to yes. So if we're super command line hardcore persons, we'll say, hey, type yes. And it'll say yes is a built-in, or yes is hashed, or that's just me showing off that instead of saying which yes is it that's in my path, I'm going to say type yes, and that's even more hardcore. So hey, Santa CTL, I would like to create a rule. I would like that rule to be a blacklist, and I would like to have it be at the path. Is that a path? And let's see what happens. So we need root. Bang, bang. Keyloggers activate. And there we go. We added a rule for that SHA-256 fingerprint on a binary. So I just confused all of you because there's two applications of SHA-256 going on here. One is on the cert based on the developer who signed the app when they got loaded onto your system. And the other is just any old binary that you find. If you fingerprint it, you can make it, therefore, that it will not run just that one binary. So if I say, hey, yes, keep on rocking in the free world, Santa says, no, 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 no. When I was testing this, I had a nice, you can have it say something at the top as well instead of, hey, this has been blocked from executing because it has been deemed malicious. You can just say no when you say yes. And then this checkbox, just so that people aren't confused about it, all it is that, like, if I dismiss this, where am I in the world? It would continue to pop up this thing, and so I might be annoyed. This would stop this from popping up for 24 hours at least. So like, it's still not permitted. That doesn't give you a whitelist. That is something that you would need a server component for. Mr. Luis. I can repeat it. I can project from the diaphragm.
The default installation of Santa would not be denying anything by default. One has to sort of, from scratch, create all the rules you want.
Yep.
And does Santa have a built-in mechanism to prevent blacklisting itself or somebody trying to blacklist itself?
Right, so it has trust in between all of its components because this daemon is running in user land, this GUI is running in user land. So while the daemon is running as root and the kernel extension is obviously privileged on your system, it does verification as it starts up to verify all of its components. Someone would actually know a little bit more, and I gave you a BS answer yesterday, even though it was right? Even though it was correct, it was still BS. Please, Mr. Cavanis.
You should just go up there.
You could.
I don't, yeah. No, we're good. When Santa starts, it whitelists the certificate that LaunchD is signed with, which there's a side effect of whitelisting everything at the OS installs. It also whitelists whatever certificate it is signed with itself. So it's signed with a developer certificate, anything that's signed by that, and anything that's signed by LaunchD. So, and those are at the top of the list and can't be overridden. You can't like explicitly then try to blacklist something. So those two. And by default, that's the Google cert unless you re-sign it yourself. But to re-sign the kernel extension, you need a special signing certificate from Apple. It's not just the regular one, which is why we provide the signed one ahead of time.
Is that specific to 10.11 because that's it, or is that also backwards compatible?
Question was, is that specific to 10.11?
No, it's Santa. That's how Santa works. Yeah, it just whether it was 10.10 or 10.11, we wanted to make sure that when it starts up, the entire OS is available. We don't want to blacklist something accidentally and get into a really bad situation because that's complicated.
And something nice to learn was also the fact that if you put a deny on something that you need to start up the computer, you're overridden by the fact that it starts with, hey, we allow Apple's OS to start up, actually. You can't shoot yourself in the foot with that.
Right. And the cert that the OS is signed with is different than the cert that the App Store apps are signed with. As a matter of fact, there's like 6 or 7 App Store certificates at this point, so they're all separate. So allowing the OS doesn't mean you're also allowing everything from the App Store. Those are separate things.
So when it comes to the implementation details of how it uses its rules on disk, there's a rules database that is separate from the events database. And you can't really mess with that. So if something that's already malicious wants to get into that rules database and whitelist itself, you can't even do that as root. This is an open database. So don't ask me how I figured that out. Like Mr. Jordan yesterday, of lots of bad things that you shouldn't do, this is one of those things that you can't do. It's kind of protected by its operation, at least from a casual perspective, it's harder when it comes to its attack surface. So the events of what it's logging about, why it takes action, or how it came up with the actions that it took is a completely separate database than the rules database. And that was 5 minutes, right?